Hello, happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome to our first Thursday talk show. That's right. We have been having so much fun talking with you guys every Saturday that we decided to bring this on Thursday as well as a live show on Twitch.
So nice, we had to do it twice.
There you go. There you go.
There's the tagline right there for you. Hey, how's it going, everyone in chat? What is going on? Happy Thursday. It's almost the end of the week, right? Something to look forward to. There's a light. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's the light. Hump. It's that over that hump, right? And it's that light that you want to actually go toward. Not the one that they warn you, like, hey, it might be a train at the end of the tracks. No, this is like the weekend. Freedom, maybe, for many of you.
Freedom. Unless you work in retail, in which case, we're sorry, we feel your pain.
That today might be your day off, and happy day off.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us here today.
That's right. And welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for all the hosts. Touch Me Nancy, Simquill. Thank you so much, everybody else, for joining us in chat. If you are listening to us on Podbean, iTunes, Player FM, any of the other podcast aggregators, or you're watching us on YouTube, come on over Thursdays at 4 p.m. PDT or Saturdays at 2 p.m. PDT and join us for our live talk show. We'd love to have you. We love conversing with our audience. I learn so much awesome stuff every week because we've got audience members from all over the world. Brazil, Sweden, Germany, Canada.
Oh, those Canadians, man. Those Canadians, I tell you.
We let them in here, you know.
But yeah, thank you so much from everyone joining us. And if you can't join us for a live stream, again, make sure, leave comments, follow, subscribe on the platform that you're hearing us through. Because again, we do check our comments on YouTube, on Podbean, and many other platforms. So leave your commentary, share your thoughts with us, because your thoughts are very important to us. We want to talk about what you want to talk about. So let's dive into those topics and really dive deep into them and see what kind of conversation we can pull out. So feel free, leave comments on whatever platform, again, you're listening to, and make sure to hit that follow button. That way you're notified whenever more content comes out for you. You, Canada.
Oh, Canada. There's a song, I think, right?
That would be their national anthem, yes. Yeah. There's a songwriter that has that would be their national anthem.
That would be, yeah. I feel like I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I don't know a medium bit about a lot of things, and I'm trying to get there. It's
a process, right?
Right, but I do know a lot about some very few things. And that's, shows like The Expanse and...
Civilization 5. I know you've been playing a lot of that recently.
I have been really obsessed with it. Yeah, I'm not going to lie.
And of course, for those of you just listening in, we also do game streams. So if you love what you hear, make sure to also follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/MindMineTV, as we do game streams throughout the week. As of recently, we've been actually taking on Hitman, which we'll be taking on tonight, actually, in just a few hours here. And then from there, we've been also doing We Happy Few, I'm trying to think, 7 Days to Die, and many more games. Yeah, so we've been having a blast, and we'd love to have you join us and have just as much fun with us as we are with these games. So come on by, give us a follow, and come join us in chat. We'd love to have you stop by, hang out, enjoy some games, and create some really awesome stories. Now, talking about stories, that's why we do this show, right? We tell stories, but again, they're driven through the news. They're driven through what's happening in the world. So our goal is to filter down everything that's been being bombarded at you day in and day out, and try to really hit on some important topics that we feel will impact your life. And again, one of the biggest factors is technology, and how technology is moving things through our lives, right? So much has changed just in the past 5 years, let alone in 10 and 20 years. We've seen massive changes thanks to the internet. And then all of a sudden now we're jumping into things like IoT, IoE. So there's so much that's being created right now. And there's so much that's just being thought of and just is in the test phases that we don't even really know about yet. And so we found something that we thought might engage you concerning a little part of a city in Toronto that's going to hit on a lot of elements talking about the Internet of talking about the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything. But first off, what we have for you is the fact that, well, we live in what's called the Rentership Society. S's. Every time I do this talk show, for whatever reason, I hit an S word, and it's like
It's like a lisp is coming on you, and they're like, "Oh, we gonna take up residence here,"
or something. I don't know, but it's crazy. So anyway, I'm just so excited. That's all. So we're talking about the Rentership Society. What is this exactly, right? What the hell is the Rentership Society? Well, it's basically where, in this world now, we want experiences over things. And we don't want a ton of crap cluttering where we live and where we walk through and where we work. So, we want the experience without having to have all the stuff weighing us down, right? And so now there's been a lot of advancement in technology and in business to help provide that. So instead now, we are experiencing things without ever having to own anything, right? And this is both coming from both millennials and baby boomers, and they're quote unquote buying into this. So across generations, people are craving experience, memories, but with less emphasis on things. So they want to rely on someone else to provide those things to them. Were you going to say something?
Oh, just not buying into it. Ha ha.
Yeah.
Ha ha ha. Pun intended.
And so, for example, we see, for example, malls dying out, right? Unfortunately, I love actually going to a mall. It's a great social experiment just to kind of look through and see the people that you come across and the interactions and everything else. And it is actually nice for me personally to go into a store and actually have the tangible goods right in front of me, right? Be able to try it on, try it out without having to worry about, does this work for me? And if not, then I have to worry about packing it back up and shipping it back off, right? But for many people, they like that kind of just instantaneous, I don't have to leave the house to purchase something. And so we're seeing more and more of these places now thriving because they're offering something else, right? So a lot of these places now offer food plazas, entertainment places, apartment complexes, indoor skating, ice skating especially is another concept as well that's been brought up into many of these shopping centers. But also too, for instance, when you look at how technology has impacted us, one of the largest taxi services in the US is Uber. And also if you look at like Lyft and some of the other ride shares, and yet they don't own a single car. That's amazing to think, right?
Yeah.
That one of the largest taxi services, they don't own any of their cars. You can also look at fancy
and
cars.
They probably don't even have a lot of employees, to be honest. Because they're drivers.
Not direct employees, right. Yeah, a lot of them are independent contractors, basically. And, we're also seeing, too, the fact that, this is, of course, not just impacting people who need the cars, but also the businesses, right? So, like, the people don't have to own the cars to get from point A to point B. The businesses don't have to own the cars to get those people to point A, point B because of this technology. You can also see this, for instance, with, like, fancy cars. Like, if you want a really nice car for the day, you could go to a place like Zipcar. For clothes, there's all these subscription boxes, right? Whether you go through some sort of Loot Crate or I think there's like a Fashion Stork, there's Rent the Runway, La Tote, and many, many, many others. Some that might not be so obvious as well would be like vacation homes. You don't own a vacation home? Don't worry about it. There's Airbnb. There's also for furniture too, like Feather allows you to experience furniture, was it 3 to 12 months at a time?
Yeah. And there's also things like Court Furniture, which is like a brick and mortar place where you can go and you rent your furniture as well. So there's a lot of different
Rent-A-Center is another one as well.
That's right, yeah.
And that's been around for a while now, but now we're starting to see the popularity of this trend coming into play, right? Where people too don't feel like they're being bogged down by the stuff. Like they don't have to worry about it being an official purchase, right? They could get it temporarily. If they don't like it, screw it. They, return it and they get something new without I feel like the sense of losing money, like a wasted investment.
And even if you think about something like Amazon, right? Or, oh my goodness, what is that company? Not Wayfair, Zappos, right? Where you can basically try before you buy now. So they mail you out all this stuff. You try it on, you play with it for a little bit, and then you return it. Or even if you just buy it up front, but really you're trying out for a bit, and then it's so easy and so quick to get a refund, to return it. You can actually go to Kohl's now. As there's some Kohl's around the country where they have Amazon drop-off centers. So you buy something from Amazon, it comes to your house, you're like, meh. You go to Kohl's, you drop it off. You don't even have to put it in a package. And yes, I speak from experience. You don't even have to put it in a nice package. You just throw it at them and you're like, man, I don't want this anymore. And they're like, okay, here's a 25% off coupon for something at Kohl's. Thanks. Thanks. It's pretty intense.
It is. It absolutely is. And again, yeah, it's that rentership on-demand lifestyle, where we want everything in the world that we see, right? I want this, I want that, because we are very consumeristic, and that's what's really pushed to us, and that's what's been fostered. But again, people are not making enough money for that to be sustainable. So then, of course, you have these subscription or, companies coming in and saying, okay, well, here, this is a way of making it more realistic. Of course, so the problem is that if we rely too much on this technology, on this sort of advancement in a way of business and how we handle business and receive services and goods, we're going to end up needing an endless stream of cash to make daily, weekly, and monthly payments. And that can actually even cost you even more in the long run if everything is based on a subscription, right? Because now a lot of things you don't just purchase, have, and hold on to for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, right? Like you would pass down like furniture to the kids or something like that. Like a lot of that is gone. And we will continue to see it being gone if we rely too heavily on these subscription-based organizations and businesses.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Like, if you think about Adobe Creative Cloud, right? Like, I love Adobe Creative Cloud. It's like, what, you pay like $50, 50 US dollars a month, and you get all of their programs, which is great if you use all their programs, like all of their different updates, everything is included, right? So if you're looking at that over a whole year, what is that? 50, I'm going to have to do some quick maths here, but a little over $500, right? For the year to get all of this stuff. Now, if you were to just go and buy Photoshop, let's say, that's only about, I think, $300, right? And you own it forever. Now, you don't get the new updates and the fancy stuff, and you don't have access to all the other platforms, but you do own it, and it's yours. And if something goes wrong with Adobe Creative Cloud, you don't have to worry about it because you've got that Photoshop. But for about, a little over $500 a year, you can actually get all the programs, which, of course, over the year, that's huge savings. Can you imagine paying $300 times, what, the 20 programs that they have? It's amazing. But let's say you only use 1 or 2 programs a year. After a while, you're right, you're paying way more over the course of like 10 years if you have it for 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. But it does also offer you the convenience of, I just want to use it heavily for the next 6 months for a project. Great. So you just only pay for those 6 months. That's really valuable as well. So there's definitely pros and cons on that for sure.
Well, and we are on Twitch, and of course Twitch has a heavy culture of gaming, right? Well, so how does this impact you? Well, besides, for instance, subscription services like Loot Crate, where they have Loot Crate Gaming, for example, where you get game swag and all those kind of elements that you might be interested in. Many don't realize that, for instance, platforms like Steam, those platforms, these massive libraries of video games, are all very heavily embedded in this culture because the games that you purchase are not games that you own. And again, let me repeat that. The games that you purchase through Steam are not games that you own.
I know, my mind was blown too.
You're basically purchasing a license to be able to play it. So at any point in time, if Steam decides or if the publisher decides / the developer decides to take that game down, guess what? You don't have access to it. This is the same if you use EA Origins and many of these other software platforms. If these companies decide they don't want you playing it, they have the right to take it down and strip it from you, because they could say, well, all you did was purchase basically a license at will, if you will. That's what I'm going to call it, at least. It's a license at will. So at any point in time, they can strip that license away from you and go, well, it's our property anyway. So unless you went to GameStop and bought the physical copy of that game, you don't actually own it. And again, a lot of people are surprised by this. Like, but it's on my library, there are files on my computer. Well, that's fine, but they don't put core operating files a lot of times on the computer, or they're able to, again, strip that out because there is a connection between some of the files and the Steam platform. And so, we are seeing a lot of this even in gaming. So if you don't think it impacts you because you're like, well, I don't care about Loot Crate, or I don't care about the Fashion Stork, or, all these other systems,
Fashion Stock.
Or I don't use Uber, or I don't use Lyft, that doesn't matter to me. Yeah, well, you're probably using Steam. And also, I know a lot of gamers listen to music. Think about Spotify. Think about Pandora. Or if you read books and you read it on the Kindle, think about Amazon Kindle as well. Again, these are all systems where we're given the content, but don't always own it, right? Unless we do actually physically purchase it and say, okay, yes, I am buying this song, give it to me. But yeah, because with Spotify and Pandora, we listen technically for free, right? But they collect data, and they also push ads down us unless we pay the monthly fees that they have for certain memberships to make it ad-free or less ads.
Yeah, I remember when Hulu first came out and it was completely 100% free and you got to watch all these shows and it was amazing. And I was like, how are these people going to sustain themselves? And sure enough, ads were introduced and an ad-free plan was introduced. And I was like, all right, I see value in Hulu. So I purchased $7.99 at the time. And then about maybe a year or two ago, they introduced the ads sometime plan, which is still $7.99, or maybe it's $8.99 now. And then there's the never ads plan, except on some TV shows, and that's $11.99. And then I'm sure later on it'll be choose your tiers of ads that you want and pay accordingly. Which, it's understandable to some degree, right? Even though a lot of these companies don't necessarily own certain things, they do manage the platforms that they're on, and they manage the getting the content in the first place and then distributing it out, and server space, and you do have some employees and there is some overhead, and I get it, they have to pay for that. But at the same time, right, how many of us have subscriptions to, I don't know, things from magazines, which can be it's $10, I think it's $10 a year for Entertainment Weekly, right? But those types of subscription prices add up. So over the course of a year, you're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars on something that you may have not really needed or wanted to begin with, or maybe are no longer interested, but it's only $10, no biggie. And Dalamaz actually brings up a good point in chat. Don't forget that if you have an old version, let's say, of a software, someone else has a new version. So now there's compatibility issues too with bought versus updated, your rented updated version, as it were, as well. And Coparistic also mentions, going back to that Rentership Society, where we actually are looking for experiences versus the things themselves, right? Do you prefer Hulu, Netflix, or Amazon for your viewing pleasure, right? Which experience do you actually prefer? It's a product of the internet experiencing without ownership, is also going back to the Blockbuster video model. And that's a great point, right? Going into a Blockbuster, for those of you that remember.
Back in the day.
They weren't selling you the movie, Culpuristic says, but the experience of the movie. And exactly like how coffee has been transformed, Starbucks has turned it into an experience.
Well, I will say with that, though, that it actually, I guess it wasn't always... I mean, coffee houses actually in the late 1700s, I guess weren't always considered an experience in a way like it is now, but there were similarities to how people would meet up at the coffee house on purpose to connect, learn about the news. They would read the newspaper. It's like in the late 1700s, you had these massive coffee houses that kind of remind you of like pubs, actually. And they had long benches and everything.
The tavern.
Yeah, and you would sit next to each other and chat about the day. You would do this early in the morning. You would talk about the latest kind of gossip and news happening around the town or city or village, whatever you were in. And then you'd also read the newspaper because you get that fresh printed newspaper right then and there, and you could leaf through and catch up on your day, basically. But now, though, Starbucks has taken that concept and somehow, kind of evolved it in a way where it's like, well, we want to bring that community hub back. But at the same time, make it kind of a new sort of experience. So you're not just coming there now for the news, but to connect, right? So everyone's like, well, let's go on a coffee date. Let's grab a cup of coffee and we'll talk. So then you go straight to the Starbucks, you know what I mean? Like, and a lot of times their marketing has been so much about the experience at a Starbucks. And when you walk in, right, it's about that ambiance, that experience, the paintings on the walls, the music that's playing from the speakers in the house, and all of that. They've really tried to hone in on a specific look, which then invokes a feeling in us as soon as we walk in. And a lot of times, depending on how busy and loud it is, it's welcoming in a way. It's like you kind of just want to sit and relax. It sort of has a library vibe without the library bit of it.
You can be much louder.
And you can be way the fuck louder than in any library. So there is that too.
I will say, though, that, it's kind of interesting that you say that, for example, going to a Starbucks or really like any Starbucks type coffee place that a lot of places are now trying to emulate. I look at you, Panera Bread and McDonald's. But, you talk about connection, and ironically, it's also a place where people go to really, in a way, isolate themselves, right? Because everyone's at their computers with their headphones on, not looking at anybody else. But they all want to be around other people, like, doing the same thing. It's like, let me just at least get out of the house, right? Like, it almost counts like I went and I had a human connection somewhere. And yet, you're pretty much very isolated because of this very technology as well. I find that very interesting.
Oh yeah, and with the hat actually says too, I think some of their mentality is the microtransaction concept. It's easier to get the consumer's money if it's little by little as opposed to one large sum all at once. Exactly. Because what would you purchase, right? Would you purchase, for $20 a month or for $30 a month? You get a whole wardrobe sent to you, right? But if you then say, per year, now all of a sudden you're looking at, it's just, a little under $400. Oh, shit. Okay, well, that's quite a bit up front, right? So, yeah, I completely agree. I think the subscription basis really gets people because they don't think the long term. They think the short term, and they also have that want that's pushing them to even think over that and just go, screw it, just here's my money. Take my money, do it now. Like that whole feeling. And so that's a great point as well.
Yeah, I never, with the hat, that microtransaction concept too, I feel like is something that was, I guess, made mainstream by all these games that have come out, but it's really true for a lot of different other transactions in the real world that in a way that I've never thought about before. That's really a good point.
Yeah, and again, gamers out there, if you think, the whole subscription type of model doesn't really apply to me. You're still sort of experiencing it through these microtransactions, right? These video games with these loot crates or loot boxes.
Battle passes.
Yep, battle passes. You having to get V-Bucks or something like that in order to get a skin that you want. Things like that. Those all impact and are part of this sort of niche focus of how to run business. So we're seeing a lot more of that. Microtransactions come from credit cards. There you go, too. Think $4,000 on a credit card, only $175 a month for 5 years. You apply interest, everything else going into that. Yeah, I mean, again, this isn't anything new, of course, as Dalamos has been putting it, because they've been doing it in credit cards. But now it's evolving. It's becoming larger and even more obvious, I guess, if you will, because of how companies are going about it, and they're trying to find new ways to incorporate the microtransaction or to incorporate the subscription and to once again try to figure out new ways just to get you to purchase. Because again, we start getting away from something. You know, a lot of the stuff that we used to do 15 years ago, we don't do anymore. And a lot of people are feeling that. You know, a lot of these brick and mortar stores who refuse to evolve to the times are now trying to figure out finally new ways of doing it, or they've gone out of business. Most recently, actually, what was it? I think Sears actually had to file for bankruptcy recently, or was very close to filing for bankruptcy, even though they gave a huge bonus to their CEO, and which is a weird thing that tends to happen in the U.S. It's interesting. And then, of course, you have Toys R Us, for example, which went completely out of business. They went belly up and closed down all the stores, at least from what I'm aware of.
Which is so sad, because my parents never really took me to Toys R Us, and I only really experienced it when I was older, and now I am sad that it's gone. But it wasn't that exciting when you're older, to be fair.
Yeah, and a lot of these stores also have store cards, Dalamos mentions too. Like, oh, do you have the this card or the that card? Now, some of these cards, of course, are perks, right? They're trying to get you excited about purchasing more. So this is another way of getting you sort of into a subscription type mentality, right? So you go to Starbucks, you show them your Starbucks card. The Starbucks card was free unless you get their credit card, which is the more specific card that Dalamos is talking about. But you scan these loyalty cards, right? And you get points. You go, well, shoot, you know, bring my friends over to Starbucks. I'll treat them. And guess what, too? Not only do I come out as the cool guy, as the nice guy in this whole, situation, but I get points. So yeah, just, throw that onto my card, and then I get those points, and then I can get a free drink or a free pastry or a free this or that. But then again, it's like we're so eager to get the free, but we forget about how much we had to spend to get to that free item, which a lot of times could be $20, $30, $40, $50, $100. A lot of times for some of the bigger companies, it's $100 or more dollars, and even then you might get like 5% back. Ooh.
Hey, that could be huge.
It's something back, but
not everything about this rentership society, quote unquote, is negative, of course, right? There are all sorts of benefits. Like Touch Me Nancy said, if you just kind of want to start out and see if it's something that you really want to buy or purchase or experience, you can have it for a much lower price, right? Like if you are thinking of buying that fancy car,
yes.
Instead of just doing a test drive with the pushy salesman and around the block a few times, you can go get your fancy dream car from Zipcar or wherever, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and really test it out for a few weeks or something like that. If you don't want to own a home because there are so many hidden costs no one tells you about, or if you don't want to be tied down to a place for a while, perfect. Rent your homes. You can move every year if you want to. You can move every month if you want to, right? You can experience not only new places to live, but you can literally experience new environments altogether, new landscapes, new cities, right? You're not tied down to all that other stuff. And when you don't have the stuff also to weigh you down, right? Like we moved across the country and there were all these books that I didn't want to throw away. And it was like a pain trying to package them all up. I had to go through, 10 different boxes, and they had to be little boxes because you can't put too many books in one boxes because I can't carry that shit. And, it's amazing, but there is a freedom, right, that's associated with this rentership society that is actually appealing, certainly to me and certainly to a lot of other people. So it's not all bad.
No,
it's just
exactly.
we want to discuss it because we're interested in the implications of it, right? Like for the future, exactly like you said. in the will, in my last will and testament, will I be like leaving subscriptions to Adobe Creative Cloud to my children? Like what will it be? It's interesting to think about.
It is. It really is. And I would say, just to kind of round out the topic here, I think also that when it comes to the mentality of people now, right? So a lot of it is with the millennial mentality, and I'm not saying millennial in a bad way. I'm a part of this group too, and I know we get shit on constantly. So, and it's not because we're actually doing anything wrong a lot of the times, just because businesses are pissed off, industries are pissed off, because what we're requesting, they're not delivering, and they're feeling it in their pocketbooks a lot of times. And they can only squeeze so much out of the baby boomers and so forth, right? And there are many baby boomers, actually, as we mentioned too, in this sort of niche of people or grouping of people or of thought, where it's like, look, we've seen the collapse of our economy, right? We've seen how much in debt people can be in, and how much in debt people can be in. You look at student loans now, especially for the millennials, right? Like, they own a massive amount of debt with such high interest rates that they're going to be, just head above water for probably the rest of their life. And so because of what's been set up, people don't want to make those investments, because a lot of times they've seen what can happen. You can go bankrupt. You can lose everything. You can lose your house. You can lose your car. There's just so much that can negatively impact you, that more people are trying to get away from that. Because it's like, no, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be over-reliant, on a very specific system that I've seen fail. And I think that's really important to mention, because it has failed many, many people. And it just doesn't work anymore, because the businesses, they don't care if you go bankrupt, right? They're just trying to squeeze as much out of you as possible. And then they know that there's going to be another company that helps you with the bankruptcy and squeezes even more money out of you. So it's this big vicious cycle that's been around for decades now. And I think people are finally getting enough of it. They're like, look, I understand the initial cost, like Dalma was talking about homes, the initial cost of the home. But yeah, then I have to take care of, manage the lawn, manage if the heater goes out, water, all these elements. If I get a leak or something that happens and I get water damage, okay, I have to pay for that, or I have to make sure to get the insurance, and I have to get all these other estimates, all these other elements that I wasn't prepared for, right? And so that's the tricky thing, because a lot of times these long-term things can also be more expensive than the subscription base. And at least you don't have the strings attached where, well, now you own your home, you're stuck with it for 10 years or for however long. Good luck with all that shit, right? With that, you just be like, I'm going to end my subscription today. And so then
you'll get an email that just says, are you sure you don't want to come back? We miss you.
Oh, yeah, then that just goes straight to spam. So it's like, yeah, it is very weird, because I think with anything, there are goods to everything to a point, right? But then you get to extremes. You get an over-reliance, or you get a manipulation of, or someone, again, using something for nefarious reasons now, right? So to a certain point, this technology is great, but if it's being pushed for nefarious reasons, just to squeeze up more money, not thinking about impact and really what the clientele wants or the customers want, or an over-reliance of it from the individual, are both very, very bad. They're polars, but they're also very, very bad either way. And so it's up to us to come together and try to figure out a system, especially a legal system, which I keep pushing, a legal system where it keeps both the businesses doing what they can do without going broke, but still supplying a specific need without having the clients or customer base getting screwed, which is the biggest thing, because we've seen that far too often. And again, this is why people go into the subscriptions. It's not like they're stuck into something for 10, 20, 30 years and they can't get out. And by the way, welcome to everyone else who's just now joining us. We appreciate you joining us. Again, we do our talk show every Thursday and Saturday live here on Twitch, but also on Podbean, Player FM, Google Play, iTunes, and many other podcast aggregators. So feel free, if you didn't get a chance to catch the beginning of this discussion, you can always catch us on those platforms as well. And on YouTube every week, we do put up the videos from these streams.
So in one of our past episodes, we actually talked about Panasonic's smart city that they're building right outside Denver, Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
And much like the previous topic we literally just talked about, right? Our society today craves experiences and in a way also that flexibility, like that quick adaptation to what you might need at any given time, right? So in the future, our roads might actually look and function a lot different than they do today as well. And instead of, sort of having this static asphalt that doesn't move, doesn't do anything else, roads might actually be built from, quote, modular, reconfigurable pieces of pavement that slot into place like puzzle pieces.
So wait, it's at that preschool test where you had to put the star peg into the star-shaped hole and the circle peg into the circle hole?
Exactly, except they're hexagonal, and the only shapes that are around are also hexagonal, so it's super easy. This summer, MIT professor Carlo Ratti and his experimental architecture studio, which is really awesome. I would love to work at an experimental architecture studio.
That sounds sexy. I like that.
So Carlo Ratti, along with Sidewalk Labs in Toronto, and Sidewalk Labs is, of course, Alphabet Inc.'s urban innovation organization. And yes, Alphabet Inc. like Google. They just unveiled their collaboration for a dynamic street prototype. Boom! And you can see it up on the screen if you're watching us on Twitch or watching this on YouTube. It's a road concept that's made of these reconfigurable parts which light up. And the parts, they're called pavers. And you'll see in the image it's a concept of it. It isn't actual size or anything like that, but it's the pavers are going to be 4-foot long hexagonal pieces that are designed to be actually picked up, easy to move around. And there'll be different kind of pavers that would exist. Not only made out of different materials like rubber, cement, that kind of thing, but also come with different functionalities. So they would all have lights in the middle of them that would, of course, be different colored lights based on need, but some would actually rise up and go back down, others would remain at the same level, and so on and so forth. Now, the reason, that we think this is an interesting conversation is, smart cities, of course, are kind of encouraging building these lifestyle centers in a way, but at a bigger, broader city level, right? Mm-hmm. They're thinking about how do we design cities that work around our needs rather than here's the city that's built in some ways around cars and commuting, and then the people come second, but rather let's think about the people and how our infrastructure can match what their needs are, right?
Which is fantastic because right now in the U.S., our infrastructure rating is like at a grade D.
Really? Who's grading us?
I don't know the actual system.
I mean, I agree with the grading, but
from what I've heard though is that we are one of the lowest rated for infrastructures when it comes to a first world nation.
Wow.
We just haven't invested in it. Our government has over-relied on an infrastructural system from the 1950s. And so that has negatively impacted us. This is why we're seeing now so many issues with water, getting fresh water through piping and stuff like that, and facing, for instance, the ever growing number or the growing population numbers in cities, but nowhere to put people, right? Because we've relied on a very old system and just said, well, it could grow with it, right? It's like people in denial. When they have that old ass suit from like 20 years ago and they're like, well, I mean, I'll eventually fit back into it. No, you won't. Knock it off. Get that shit out of here. Get something new. That's what I'm saying right now to you. I'm talking to you now, the audience listening, okay? You know who I'm talking about. You right there with the face. Get that shit out of here. What the hell?
All right, I'll go declutter my bedroom. Jeez.
That's right. But yeah, it's like, for the most part, it's like you're not. Things have changed, right? Things are a bit different now. So you need to advance and grow with it. And this is a really cool concept.
Yeah, and it's I really think this this idea of making modular roads, it's really more about not the fact that the infrastructure itself will change, but rather how we interact with that infrastructure. Like, how do we interact with the roads and everything like that? Like, the road can be modified in real time to adapt to our needs. Like, if it's rush hour, right, more car lanes are going to pop up, right? They'll lengthen the car lanes and make the sidewalk smaller, for example. But if it's late at night and there's more people like ambling around on foot or on a bike or something like that, then you get more sidewalk panels that pop up, right? And the roads will become smaller, for example, just to give a particular example. But let's say you're in a city where now they want to hold some sort of an event, right? Yeah. In the middle of the city. Like back when we lived in Boston, in Somerville would have these big, huge events held right in the middle. So they would block off the cars. Everybody would get pissed off because you had to go around. It was hard to find parking, but it was really cool because people could be literally in the middle of all of these streets at this huge intersection and, go see vendors, go see somebody singing, that sort of thing. Well, with these types of roads or this type of infrastructure in place, you could literally pop out the roads, throw on some grass pavers, and then boom, you've got yourself a nice something in the middle of the road where maybe you still have car lanes around, but you've got something in the middle that can be something for an event that you can hold or
like street festivals and things like that, where they block off the lanes. They go, hey, you have to take this side road or something like that. These roads will be able to adjust that more so you don't have to worry about the signs. You don't have to worry about the police officers out there trying to guide people. Now, of course, there are downsides potentially to this, right? In the sense of you're dealing with something that adjusts, right? So you as the driver, for example, or you as a person who might be on a bike or a scooter or whatever it is, can't get too at ease with how the road is, right? Because right now we go, the road just goes straight, then it takes a left, and we just fall into that natural habitual action of just like, okay, now I slowly take a left here, right?
Almost like autopilot is on.
Exactly. And so you have to be careful of not falling into that, because again, there's going to be times where once again the lanes will come in, the lanes will go back out. Because what they're trying to hit on are cities like New York. They have massive sidewalks because the amount of people there, but they have to have tighter, smaller roads a lot of times, but they have so much traffic. So it's like, well, how can we get a system where we can have a happy medium? And where can we have a system where we can easily adjust without taking out a whole section of the road because we have to change it up or it needs repair? Because now you just take, okay, well, these 3 hexagonal pavers are the ones not working properly. We'll take those offline, work on them, and that leaves actually much more space either on the sidewalk or on the streets, which is pretty nice too.
Right. And Culperistic says, $29.99 per month to have access to the special rush hour express lanes. Woo! Tying in very nicely the subscription model and the modular car road, I should say.
Which in LA is a thing, actually.
Yeah, you've got your fast track lanes on some of the highways.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to go north and south very quickly, you pay that extra money per month, you get that little scanner, you put it on your dashboard, and you sort of semi-zip. Again, there's still a lot of traffic, but you semi-zip down the road.
Dalamaz says, you and your special fancy electric cars get the special road. People like me who can't afford an electric vehicle get FU'd. Well, that is actually a good point as well in terms of making it easier for cars. Maybe people won't be driving the cars. Maybe they'll self-driving cars that will actually have an easier time navigating these streets because they'll be looking for, whatever signal the technology is given out, some sort of like GPS homing beacons or something. And maybe it'll actually result in less accidents. Who knows?
Yeah, there's a lot that you can do with these individual tiles from the way it sounds, from the way they're promoting it. But of course, they say that it's in its very early phases. So
right.
Even though the concept sounds great and they have a lot of ideas for it, anything could happen, right? People might say, oh, it's just not doable because that means taking down a lot of the major roads in order to put in this system, which could take quite some time. Another element, of course, too, would be, for instance, just the amount of getting used to things, right? There are people that just do not like change and don't feel comfortable relying on an automated road system, right? Because they feel like, well, wonder if one spazzes out and flips up and flips my car over, which, I don't know, maybe that's a thing.
I mean, people can do that. They can spaz out and flip something over.
I mean, that's true, right? And we
not
don't,
any different, really.
Well, we don't realize how many things are actually automated either. We really take it for granted or just don't realize. So, we rely on a lot of stuff that's already automated as is, but it's still fair. Now, one of the biggest things, though, of course, would be the data, right? Because, of course, with Google and with technology, it all involves data.
Does it? No. Tell me more.
Go for it.
No, what do you mean? They'll get data from us driving around and...
Well, so that's the whole point, is that with these smart cities, right? Let's go to the Panasonic one in Denver, for example. They have to look at traffic flow for the lighting. They have to also look at, well, how many people are in a certain area at a certain time, because then those areas will have like street lights up, for example, whereas other areas might not need them or might not need them as bright, for example.
Maybe they're motion sensor.
Or motion sensor. Ways of making the system as efficient as possible. That's really one of the main goals of a smart city or smart town or what have you. Would be the fact of efficiency. And so a lot of that is based on AI collecting information, traffic patterns, people patterns, and what have you. Now, with these systems, these hexagonal pavers actually collect data as well, because they need to adapt and adjust based on the traffic flow, based on what's happening currently. If there's an accident, the AI reads that and shuts down and might be able to, again, figure out a way of closing that section off to get people rerouted. So there are major concerns, actually, from the people of Toronto, where they're testing some of this out in their city. There are concerns about, well, what's going to happen with this data? Now, of course, many representatives of the company and so forth do push the fact of, well, there are, people data rights and, all this. There's all this
data rights.
There's all this legalese that's in the system right now that helps protect you and blah, 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 blah. But people a lot of times know better, right? Because it doesn't always. It's not a perfect system. And honestly, our legal system is very, very, very behind, especially with technology.
Oh, for sure.
And so with that, people have a right to be concerned of like, well, where is this data going, as well as who owns it? So, is it something where the city of Toronto owns it? Is it something where the government of Canada owns it? Or is it something where Alphabet/subsidiaries own it, and now they can also use it in, say, something like their Google ads, or something like, for example, just selling it to other marketing companies? Is there a way for them to profit off of people just living?
I mean, do you want your Amazon Prime delivered on time or what? You got to give something back in return, and it's not just the $12.99 a month.
You assume though that your taxes are the things paying for it, so you are giving something back, because that's what our taxes are supposed to go into, our public services and infrastructure, right? It's supposed to go into our roads, it's supposed to go into the fire department, USPS, and what have you. And so, again, that's a whole other topic of where the money is actually going.
For our next episode, we will be talking about taxes.
Right. But overall, though, I mean, that's where the money's coming from. It's supposed to be from the people, right? And so with that, though, then shouldn't the city own it? Shouldn't the people technically kind of own it in a way? Because they're paying for the service. It's not like they're getting it for free. It's not like it's Facebook here, right? Where Facebook's like, well, here's a free platform, but now we have the right to sell your data because we need to make money, and we're going to do advertising and all this other stuff. Will Google or its subsidiaries still try to do something like that?
Yeah, and it's all good questions, right? Because like Sidewalk Lab says, obviously it's a little too soon to say if converting urban streets to concrete blocks with lights will be financially or logistically tenable. Right, like who's going to be paying for this if it's happening? What I envision, honestly, is less about changing existing cities and more about creating new cities. That's what I'm envisioning in my head. Creating these smart cities in places where sort of the old traditional type of city wouldn't thrive for a variety of reasons. But creating them in areas that are open now, making sure all the amenities, including these epic roads, are there, but also these lifestyle centers and all of the different things that you would expect from a big city with that kind of small city feel because it's built around you, and having it be at such a cost that really only a certain subset of economically stable people could actually afford. That's what I think. Because it's a lot of money. Even if you can 3D print these materials, it's still it's a financial investment. It's also a very long time investment. So you need the people, the other resources to kind of make it happen. The project management, I can't even think of. It's intense, So I really think it's sort of like, me and my movie analogies, everybody, but like Elysium, right? The film where the rich kind of just go up on this magical, massive city world that's actually up out in space, and they leave all the poor behind on Earth to fend for themselves. So they're not interested in providing these amenities and these wonderful technology that makes life better and wonderful to the people who already exist in, quote, the muck, unquote, but rather they do liftoff and they're like, well, this city's going to be up in space. We're going to make it perfect. So that's what I think. But just as the iPad was technically introduced in a little TV show called Star Trek, you may have heard of it, back in the day, right, years ago, where Picard's looking at this thing, kind of looks like an iPad, and now we have one, and it's at the point where anybody could technically get one. It might not be the biggest one or the most powerful one or the newest one, but it is a lot more affordable nowadays than it ever was, right? And you can put it on a payment plan, don't you worry, at your local smartphone seller store. We don't know where this might go. I think it's really awesome that at least we're starting to think about it, where we're not just willy-nilly creating technologies, but we're rather creating technologies with people in mind. Sure, they might take our data, and sure, maybe it wouldn't be affordable for everybody at the onset, but I think I'm hopeful that this is a good progress. We're progressing in the right direction, I think.
Well, and if anything, the launch of these ideas or of these concepts are really important just for people to start focusing on weak points of our society, right? Like I said, our infrastructure gets a rate of D or below typically.
It's in the U.S.
And so with that, it just feels like, we just don't give it enough attention, or we complain about it but don't realize that there's something that can actually be done. And so hopefully with ideas like this coming up in fruition, coming up to the mindset of more people, hopefully more people start focusing in on these things and will start thinking about, where things can go. Because, we hear about technology for health, right? That's really big because there's a lot of money in it, and pharmaceuticals and things like that. But when was the last time that you heard about technology in roads, right? Or in sidewalks or at your local park? We overlook it, right? But as soon as these things become obsolete, we go, well, why weren't these maintained? Well, they were. But the problem is they're being maintained with an old system. And so hopefully, if anything, these can bring in new systems that can help really progress us as a society in what we experience and how we experience it. Ideally, right? That's the hopeful outlook, at least.
Right. So we're hoping. We're hoping for good stuff, y'all. And, Alphabet Inc. apparently is going to take over the world. So if you guys are looking to hire... No, I'm just kidding.
I think we should just have a massive business death match. We just throw Google in with, I don't know, or Alphabet Inc. in with, I would say Apple, but they don't actually own a lot of businesses per se. I mean, they are a large company in with themselves. But
no, but they own a lot of, luxury items.
But I would say Alphabet Inc. I would say throw in Amazon. I would say throw in a lot of these other companies. Just Walt Disney, the Disney Corporation, whatever. Throw them in there because they own
everything. Also,
a lot. And just fight it out to the death. Let's just see what happens, folks.
Oh, it's like in that movie. Was it Demolition Man?
I don't know. It depends on what you're talking about.
Demolition Man. There's another movie analogy for y'all here. A Demolition Man, where they had the restaurant wars and Taco Bell came out on top. Yes, tacos. Yeah, just throw all these companies in for a deathmatch. I'll be down for that. Denise, Google Alphabet, I should say, is the. So when Google got started, they were sort of like their main company, and then of course they branched out into everything, and so now everything has actually been, I guess, like taken over by their mother company, which they've created called Alphabet. Inc. is just incorporated, but yeah, if you look at what Alphabet owns, it's a lot of different things.
Oh yeah, and they're notorious too for buying out smaller tech companies, app companies especially, and then pretty much just consuming them and either just closing down the company altogether and just taking the technology and holding on to it for a rainy day, or implementing it into something. For instance, Waze. Waze is and was a very popular GPS mapping program for your smartphone, right? And Google liked it so much they bought it out. Now Waze at least still exists. That app still exists. But Google has taken a lot of those concepts and implemented it into their own mapping system as well. So yeah, they're notorious for just taking over companies you probably didn't know existed, but they had some great ideas, and then now they're starting to use it in some form or fashion. Facebook is kind of getting into that a little bit as well. Like they bought what was it? WhatsApp,
Snapchat?
Of course, many years ago. They bought up Instagram, of course, as well. So they've made their purchases too. Now, those systems, again, still at least exist. But you probably didn't really realize, for most of you, that either it was owned by another company or that Facebook even owned them now. So again, it's a lot of these companies are notorious for just eating up smaller companies where they think they can make a lot of money.
Net income from Alphabet Inc., Denise has found out, is $12.66 billion.
Oh, is that it? I mean, I got that in my back pocket.
Okay, wait, what's the U.S. deficit? Can we...
That's why I sit with a lean, because all that money is in my back pocket on the right side.
Oh, there it is.
Actually, half a butt cheek is actually on the chair I'm sitting on right now. The other half is being cradled by money.
You know what you need is to rent out the, a fanny pack. Carry all your money in.
Oh my God, those fanny packs.
They're
U.S.
coming
debt.
back, y'all. What is up with that?
And Dalmau says U.S. debt $20 trillion, I think.
Oh, okay. So
so that would help cut down a chunk of it, a nice chunk of it at least. But well, we're in an interesting world, folks. And again, this is why we bring this up to you, because in the end, it's not just about what the answers are that the people giving you the information, what their answers are to it. But it's about the answers that you come up with and the drive that you put into these things to either continually reinforce what's happening or to try to change what's happening, right? So it is really up to you all to take this information and run with it in one direction or the other. And that's really what our goal is for every single episode, right? So anyway, with that though, this does wrap up our talk show for today, for Thursday. Thank you everyone who's been listening, who's been watching, who's been chatting in the chat room today. We greatly appreciate you. Now, don't forget though that at 6 p.m., so in little less than an hour today, this Thursday, so today, 6 p.m. PDT, we're going to be taking on more Hitman by IO Interactive. So make sure to join us then, because also... really cool announcement. Also,
really cool announcement. Really cool.
At 6 p.m., we are going to unveil the new channel artwork.
Woo!
And with that channel artwork comes some major epicness that was all created within the mind of our very own Ariel Adina, who's a community member and subscriber here. We greatly appreciate all the hard work that she's done. I know she's been working really hard at it and really trying to go through all the different notes and all the different concepts and everything else to try to tweak this out and really make it work out for the channel. So we really appreciate it. She really knocked it out of the park. So we'd love to have you join us for that. So that way you all can check it out as well and see all of her hard work that she's done for the channel. So again, that's 6 p.m. PDT, Hitman by IO Interactive. We're showcasing the new artwork by Aaaand. And with that, once again, thank you so very much for bits, for the follows, and everything else. We greatly appreciate you and your support, as, again, we want to be able to give you the best content possible with the best discussions, the best information, and hopefully soon also some great interviews and much, much more. So with that, thank you, and hopefully we'll see you later today. Have a good one.
Hog a champ. Holy shit, so many.